I'm not going to waste away to nothing, man.
Under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Yes, sir. So there are a number of things that are covered in the course of to the exciting, but as part of our process, it is worth time to be reminded of what it is we're trying to do and for whom we're trying to do it. And so with that, I'm going to read our mission statement. I'm just going to ask that as I read it, that you might think about the words, maybe even pick out some words that are particularly powerful to you or meaningful to you, and just think about them for a moment as we consider what it is that we try and do every day, that we come and serve the 8,832 children who are in attendance across our 11 campuses and 128. Our mission is that Midway ISD will maximize individual potential within a learner-centered and supportive environment to prepare students to excel in a global society. I want to thank the educators, the parents, and district leaders who are here tonight who help us try to accomplish that. I hope that that stays foremost on the front of our mind as we move throughout this evening's agenda.
Thank you. With that said, get to the what's going to recognition. Carol, I see you are up first with solo.
Good evening, everyone. Seniors in Midway High School's band and orchestra programs were awarded one of the top distinctions for high school musicians in Texas at the Texas State Solo and Ensemble Contest this summer. In addition to earning the highest rating possible on their solo performances, violinist Alana Schubert, you can come on up, and French horn player, French horn, Jacob Wiley, both received Outstanding Performer Award at this contest. Now, a little background that isn't on the script, and I'm sorry. When these judges judge literally hundreds of solos each day, they are told only pick one or two maybe that get to be an outstanding soloist. There are thousands of students who perform at the Texas State Solo and Ensemble Contest, and we have two of just a few outstanding performers. This puts them in the top 2 to 3% of everyone in the state. They get big giant medals, which is just like state medals. And they're directed by orchestra director Dr. Bo Benson and the band director Pam Hyatt. And I know their families are here to celebrate as well. So would you please join me with a big round of applause for Alana and Jacob?
Up, state FAA.
So we had we have two Midway FFA teams that placed among the top 10 in Texas throughout the 2022-23 school year. And in addition to that, some of those were the youngest students in the competition. And so we'll first call up Midway's Ag Issues team. They made up 2 8th graders and 2 freshmen at the time of the competition. And they made history as the first Ag Issues team to make the state finals. And so we'll call up team members Eli Johnson, Holden White, Jeremiah Ocampos, and Zoe Copeman, where they placed 10th in the state in the competition that their teacher says is typically dominated by upperclassmen due to its in-depth nature and level of competition required to be successful. So if we'll also have teacher Beth Zulhoff, please come join them up front. They're getting very close to kicking this season off, and I imagine these young folks will be back at it again. And so also excelling at state was our Midway's FFA wildlife team, which included Grayson Haynes, Hazel Davison, Holden White, Taylor Dudley, Ethan Blanc, and Mia Reedy, who finished in 9th place out of 200 teams in the state. I'd also like to call back up Ms. Zulhoff. It should also be noted that Grayson, who was a freshman at the time, placed 15th high in the state contest out of 236 total people. Next, assistant soup.
Go under.
Our honoree, Miss Jackie Villarreal, if you'll please come forward. So excited to recognize Jackie tonight. She is Spring Valley Elementary's assistant principal. She's been named the 2023 Waco Under 40 honoree by the Greater Waco Chamber of Commerce. Within Midway ISD, Jackie has taken the initiative to develop many creative programs that meet the specific needs of her students. In her previous role at Midway Middle School, she saw the need to help special education students learn transferable skills from school to the workplace, which many of you know I'm very passionate about as well. In partnership with these students, she developed a grant-funded small business experience for students. It's a coffee cart that delivered coffee and treats to teachers around the campus, and actually was the premise for our Red, White, and Brew Cafe that opened at the high school this year as well. Jackie's commitment to excellence is evident in all of her work, and she ensures that each of her ideas is grounded in best practice and in research. In addition to her professional involvement, Jackie is deeply committed to public service. She volunteers her time and skills at several local nonprofits. We're so grateful for Jackie and her commitment to professional excellence and to improving the Waco community. Congratulations, Jackie.
Next up, we've got our
Yes, sir. In recognition of their dedication and exceptional commitment to students, Midway ISD annually celebrates a Teacher of the Year at each elementary campus and 2 Teachers of the Year at each secondary campus. Tonight, we'd like to recognize our 2023 Campus Teachers of the Year before the board. Teachers, when I call your name, please come to the front, and what I'm going to ask you to do, and your teachers, so I know you can do this, is start the line at that direction and come across, and so at the end we'll have you all prepared for a nice big photo op, okay? So this is going to be fun and exciting. And if you're here supporting these teachers, feel free to get loud. All right, from Castleman Creek Elementary School, Miss Stacy Spink. From Chapel Park Elementary, Lilia Oubre. From Hewitt Elementary, Kristen Holland. From Park Hill Elementary, Laurel Fisher. From South Bosque Elementary School, Catherine Owens. From Spiegelville Elementary, Jill Kuykendall. From Spring Valley Elementary School, Di Coatman. From Woodway Elementary School, Lori Johnston. Before I go to the secondary schools, I would like to note the fact that Ms. Copeman was our elementary teacher of the year. Okay, from Midway Middle School, Wade Copeman. And Kayla Torp. From River Valley Middle School, Jonathan Sides. And Beth Zulhoff. From Midway High School, Ben Kasarek. That's the high school. And Amy Smith. We'll get him to you. I apologize for that. It's worth noting that our secondary teacher of the year was Ms. Zulhoff. I speak for everyone when I say Midway is incredibly blessed to have such amazing educators like the group represented before you. They are outstanding amongst their peers. We have a fantastic teaching staff, and when talking to the group that selects our teachers of the year, they always say the same thing: the hardest thing is narrowing it down to one. And so the honor is not only for these individuals, but for the weight they carry in representing so many others who they know who are on their campuses, who do such a great and amazing job every day as well. At this time, I know that Miss Marlin's going to want to get a big group photo. When she's done, you two come here real quick. The rest of y'all can go sit down. Thank you. Your certificate's being made right now, so don't leave without getting it. Okay. All right. We have one other recognition we'd like to make this evening. As part of our recognitions tonight, I'd like to take this opportunity to let everyone know that our board secretary, Pam Watts, has been accepted as a member of the 2024 Leadership TASB, Texas Association of School Boards, class. She is one of 36 school board leaders from across the state who will be taking part in advanced educational and leadership training throughout the Texas Association of School Boards. One other word I'd like to add is that this is an outstanding recognition. It continues to demonstrate this school board's commitment to excellence. Not everyone's willing to put in the extra time and do the additional hard work required to go through the application process, much less serve to be a part of this. We were actually chatting right before the meeting. She said, man, when we go down there for convention in about 2 weeks, they're going to have me super busy. That's right. She'll be earning every minute of it. So congratulations, Ms. Watson. Thank you for representing us so well.
Dr. Allen, one thing I do find interesting to note here on the campus Teachers of the Year, I'm not sure whether it's a reflection on them or on Dr. Allen. We never have ever tell the students where to line up when they come up here. They just know what to do. So, all right, that concludes our recognition. Y'all are welcome to stay for the open part of the meeting, the rest of the meeting, but if you have things to do, we understand.
I almost said from the mic, apparently a requirement for being recognized in September is the last name Copeland. We have Wade, Di, and Zoe. The whole
Yeah,
family up here.
I mean, well, Mr. Tullis, you clean up nice.
Don't ever go back to the office and send me a bill. It's ridiculous.
Well, you brought it up. You brought it up. I felt bad because you had insisted that I send you a bill, and I thought I had sent you a bill, and I thought the guy's going to think I'm just a jerk.
Hold on. I think you're a jerk for not sending a bill.
Yeah, because you told me absolutely, you insisted that I did, because you did, if you will recall. And I was like, oh, this is embarrassing. You know, because, yeah, I get the ARs, and it's like,
Okay, but I hadn't been a deadbeat because I've never.
no, I know.
Okay, all right. Don't call the cops on me.
How are you, Mr. Charles?
Super.
I wanted to make it clear that, yeah, it was, I take the blame for it, you know? All right, information items. We've got 3 information items. Does any board member have any question about any of those? Any discussion we need to engage in on them? On the House Bill 3 matter, I anticipate that we will go into closed session on that one separately at the end of the meeting. But otherwise, if no questions on the information item, then we'll.
Wanted, is this the parent or editorial board, or is that around that?
It's one of the information items.
Anyway, I just wanted to go on record and thank the individuals who agreed to serve this school year.
Yes. Well noted, Pam. Okay, presentation discussion items, our monthly finance report. Wesley?
Good evening, members of the board. This is our last look at the fiscal year 2023 financial report. We're looking at the month of August. And just to clarify, just kind of the differences in the first page of the general fund revenues and expenditures versus the last page. So the first page is recorded on a cash basis. So for Mr. Green, accountants probably understand that, but essentially what that is, as money comes in, it's recorded as revenue. As it goes out, it's recorded as expenses. Whereas on the last page of the report, the projection takes into account adjustments and accruals. So for instance, the state pays us based on estimate of what we're going to earn throughout the year. And so as that money comes in, we record it as revenue. But at the end of the year, when we close the books, we make an adjustment for that revenue amount based on what we actually earn. So that's why you see state revenue on the first page of 15.9 million, and the last page of the report on the projection of 14.4, because they paid us on a higher number than what we actually earned. That's why it's important for us to keep track of our numbers throughout the year, so we don't count on actually having more money than we're actually due at the end of the year. And on the expense side, for instance, the expenses on this first page are 82.1 million. On our projection is 82.7, and a lot of that is a salary accrual because of the salaries earned in August. The teachers aren't paid until September, so the expenses aren't shown in this first page of the August report, but they are accounted for on the last page. So unfortunately, on this first page, you'll see $166,000 deficit. I wish that was what we were projecting, but we're still looking at projecting about a $1.7 million deficit to finish out fiscal year 2023. So that's kind of the last update on the fiscal year 23 report. We do have our auditors coming in October, and they'll look at our financials, make adjusting entries as needed, and then December, our auditors will be here to report on the official audit report to the board at that time. So kind of moving into fiscal year 2024, one thing we look at right off the bat is our enrollment, because a large assumption we use for estimating our budget each year is our average daily attendance, which is a product of enrollment and attendance percentage. So if you'll look here on page, hold on just a second, on page 4 of our of the financial report, you can see some of our enrollment numbers, and this is showing as of the 10th day of the school year. The reason we do that is you can see on those last two columns through our October, November snapshot day. Usually as of day 10, our enrollment is a pretty good indicator of where we'll finish the year. And so our enrollment at the 10th day of class this year is 8,823 students, 95 more than the previous year. This next page shows a graph of the 10th day of enrollment by grade span. So on that first graph, you see the last 5 years. So in 21, you see that dip because of COVID. That's the only year we've ever really had a drop in enrollment from one year to the next. And then you see it rebound the next several years. Really, the elementary was the grade span where we really felt that COVID slip there. Because you see the high school, we still actually gained students in 2021. But you can see our total enrollment there is about 1% higher on the 10th day of class this year than it was in the previous year.
Mostly that's obviously grade adjusted for when we went from intermediate to middle.
Yes. And I went back and adjusted, and you're right, took out intermediate, put 5th grade with elementary and 6th grade with middle school, exactly. And the next page shows enrollment, number of students by campus. And so that top chart there, you can see by campus and by grade. And then on the far right there, you can see it's based on building capacity. And it's a little loose there because, building capacity is kind of a general estimate, but depending on special programs, there's certain ratios you have to uphold. So it can be, a little bit up for interpretation there. But really the highest as far as percentage of occupancy, South Bosque at 92.8 and Castleman at 91.2. That's not surprising. We're definitely feeling the growth in those campuses. That bottom chart there compares the 10th day of enrollment by campus from this year to last year. Some of the bigger changes: Park Hill increased 44 students, high school increased 71 from last year, Chapel Park increased 30, and South Bosque decreased 35. A lot of that was from the grandfathering of the 5th graders to South Bosque. That's why we had more there last year, and that was adjusted for this year. So about a 1% increase from last year. The budget is built on a 1.5% increase of ADA from the previous year. Now there's a lot more that goes into it. We know we have our WADA, weighted average daily attendance, based on our weighted student funding counts. So there's lots to be said at this point. I did notice that the state updated our economically disadvantaged student count. So the budget was built on one number, but over the summer they updated it, and so our eco-dis numbers were higher. So I kind of just did a rough estimate. I know Mr. Russick always likes me to say, so what does this mean, right, for the end of the year? It's, what's your best guess at this point? But even with a 1% increase instead of 1.5, taking into account the increase in our eco-DIS numbers, it was about $150,000 more in state revenue than what we budgeted. So feel pretty good. We're going to be hopefully in the ballpark, no drastic unless something changes, fluctuations from kind of what we budgeted. Any questions on the enrollment? Okay, and then we do have 3 budget amendments in the consent agenda. And we have those, a lot of times the first of the new school year items that were ordered in the previous year, but they did not arrive by August 31st, and so we have to put those in the budget for fiscal year 2024. We had some switches, access points, furniture, and a radio repeater at River Valley. Any questions on the financial report?
If no questions on the finance report, then Wesley, we'll let you go on to the efficiency audit, which was a very interesting read for me.
Okay, yes, sir. So the efficiency audit, as required by the 86th legislature, if a district decides to call a Vader election just to adopt a tax rate that increases our M&O rate, we're required to conduct an efficiency audit and report the results to the board and to the public. So I'll kind of hit a couple of the highlights and give you all an opportunity to ask questions. On page 2 of the report is kind of the executive summary. In conducting the efficiency audit, it was Patilla, Brown, and Hill conducted it to gain understanding of our fiscal management, efficiency, and utilization of resources, and whether we've implemented best practices utilized by Texas school districts by analyzing information from fiscal year 2022. So this is a dated 1 year. It's just these numbers are based on August 31st, 2022 fiscal year end. And kind of the impetus for this is, they don't want a district to say, okay, we're going to go out and raise our M&O rate for more money, but yet we're terribly inefficient, or we're wasting money, or we have a huge fund balance, those types of things. So it's good. We want that to be out there and be public. It's also been good for us, just as administration, to look at it and get a feel for, okay, are we where we want to be? And if you remember some previous conversations this summer, we did identify some areas where we could reduce some positions based, just from just some transition and lose some positions in some areas that we thought we could. They weren't, they were good and helpful, but there were areas that maybe we could do without. And so this kind of reinforced some of the things that we've been talking about as a district. But just look at a few of these. Page 8 shows the peer districts that the auditors selected and comparing numbers. You can see there Canyon, Bernie, Liberty Hill, Midlothian, Nederland, White House, Friendship, and New Braunfels. Our accountability rating for 2022 was 96, and the peer district average was a 90. On page 10, you can see the eco-DIS numbers because that does, overall enrollment, our peer districts are close, but also the eco-DIS makes a difference as far as, just the resources needed in order to educate those students are usually higher. And so you can see we're at 32.6% eco-DIS. Our peers are 35.7, and the state average is 60. And then on page 11, you can see our revenue. So that's number 7 there. Our overall revenue per student is $9,837, well below our peer districts of $10,515 and the state of $12,504. So I did a quick calculation just to give you an idea. If we were funded at our peer district average of $10,515 per student, multiplied by our latest enrollment count in September, that's $6 million more dollars that we would have to work with.
Can you say that one more time?
Right. So the peer district average of revenue per student is $10,515, and if we were funded at that amount per student, that would be $6 million more dollars to the district. Yes. Page 12 shows expenditures per student. We're at 9,963, below both the peer district and the state average. We're also the only the one where our actual expenditures per student was higher than our revenue per student, which is not sustainable, obviously.
Yep.
And let's see what else. Page 13 shows our fund balance. I think it was interesting. Our fund balance is lower than our peer districts and the state average. Our goal isn't to have large fund balance, and like I said earlier, we don't want to have this huge fund balance and then be asking to raise our M&O revenue. And so I feel good that we are at 26.7%. Our goal is to always be at 25, so we're just right there. But it is time for us to kind of make some structural changes to ensure we don't drop below that 25%. And finally, on page 14, teacher turnover rates on section 12 there. Our turnover rate was 24% in 2022. And the average district peer turnover rate was 14.7. The state was 17.7. I was a little surprised at that number. We're quite a bit higher. But if you recall, that is the year we did all the grade reconfigurations, opened new elementary, and so we got rid of the intermediates, and so we did lose a lot of teachers kind of in that transition time, going from an intermediate grade span to just elementary and middle school. So, any questions on the efficiency audit?
Questions from the board or comments or discussion?
Did anything come as a surprise to you?
Like I said, initially that turnover, even with all the changes in 2022, I was a little surprised our turnover rate was that much higher than other districts. So that was a little bit of a surprise. Other than that, not really. I think a lot of it kind of reinforced what we've been looking at. I think there was numbers, and then our average salary was less than our peers. And so things that we kind of already knew.
What was the turnover rate for last year?
For 23, I don't know. Ashley, do you know? 17%. So that's closer to our peer district average, yeah.
What was it before this? I mean, did you look, because this was shocking to me as well. I didn't know if you tried to look into anything else to see where that came from, if it was correct. I mean, that's such a difference compared to everybody else. It just seems odd.
No, I don't think it gave us prior year, but as Ashley said, last year was back down to 17, so I think that's kind of an anomaly with all their turnover from reconfiguring the grade spans.
So on the district revenue, like you said, if we got funded at the same level as our peer districts, with the additional $6 million, the fact that we're not getting as much state funding, is that due to the property values and the local tax rate as it relates to M&O versus peer districts that maybe don't have the same property values as that?
Yes, there's a lot that goes into that. So there is, let me find that. It's on page 11. Right. So yeah, you can see our. Really, what you have to look at is your local and your state combined, because really, what we earn total state and local revenue based on our student numbers, right? And so as our values go up, that state entitlement goes down, and it could even go away, if our values go up high enough. So really, it's important to kind of look at those two together. But yes, so that, and I can do some more research on these peer districts and see, but probably a lot of them have more tier 2 funding. They've already, captured all their golden pennies and maybe some copper pennies, is probably a lot of that difference. But to the other thing, you can see the federal, we're at $1,170 per student. The peer districts is about $1,500, $2,600 for the state. That's just based on our student population and demographic.
So yeah, it looks like, quick math on that, from the revenue that we would expect to gain if the beta does pass, about $480 or so per student. Is that right? 460
Per student, 3.75 divided by however many students. Yeah,
which still, doesn't put us to the peer district average, but it puts us a lot closer.
that's right.
I'm looking at figure 5, just an overview. It looks like the makeup of the students that we're educating, spending less per student is pretty comparable to peer districts. Would that be accurate?
Yes, it looks like we're at 32.6. EcoDis peers are 35.7. Special eds both about 12. So yes, that's correct. Look pretty similar.
You did mention too, in the budget report that the state did increase our ED percent. Is that something that they estimate, or is this
Sorry,
something
they
that
increased our
our economic disadvantage percent?
It was just so that's based on census blocks. So based on our district and different neighborhoods, they're divided up into census blocks, and certain blocks you get more weighted funding based on the socioeconomics, of those. And so they updated those this summer, and before that I was just using the previous years.
Okay.
Is that census data that's updated once a decade?
No, it's every year.
I wonder how they make those estimates.
That I don't know, but yeah, the schedule is to update it every year.
Yeah, the biggest thing that stood out to me on the student characteristics, and this is something that we've always done really well, is career and technical education. We're almost at 30% for that, and our peer average is 25. So I mean, we're doing a much better job of meeting the needs of a lot of those kids for different kinds of programs, things that we want to see.
Anybody else? I was just going to say, the things you pointed out, Wesley, those were certainly three of the things that I looked at that, to me, very, very much support why it's appropriate for the board to have made the decision it made and to ask the voters to approve a 3% increase on our M&O, because you just look at the numbers, and yeah, if we're going to go forward and continue to be able to pay competitive compensation to all our staff and continue the programs that we've got for the students, we can't do that without more money. We can't. So, and while at first, it's always irritating to have the state tell you got to go spend this money before you can have that election. That aside, I think this does, for anybody that wants to look at it, demonstrate how efficient the district has been and is in the money that it gets and how it spends it. So it is supportive in my view.
See a lot of head nodding.
Do we need to do anything to accept the report, or it's just as
It's there.
Okay.
We've done it, and we checked that box, and it's available on the website for anybody that wants to take a look at it. For folks that are not interested in a bunch of numbers and percentages, it's probably, but
Well, if you're not interested in a bunch of numbers, you can look at Figure 2, which is our accountability rating score of 96. And those peer district averages that have $6 million more than we do are averaging a 90.
I would say we're efficient.
That's not a lot of numbers, but it's a pretty good one.
yep.
And I think they picked a good group of peers, districts to compare us with, so I think that's good. It's good range.
Well, and the fact that we actually, on this particular snapshot of what we're doing, as Wesley said, we're spending more per student than we're generating in revenue per student. I think that's pretty telling, right? So, all right, if nothing else, we'll go on to the CTE Capstone Project.
Okay, so this is me, but at any moment, I might call for an assist from Jess Wheeler or from Ashley Futris. And so they know that. I'm not surprising them. And the reason that I've titled this CTE Capstone Project is in talking to Jess, one of the things that he's talked about repeatedly is his desire for the district to start to work in the direction of creating experiences for students who are in the senior year portion of high school, mostly seniors, that will connect to the CTE pathway in a way that will allow them to have an authentic experience that connects them to workforce and or post-secondary education, these culminating projects. When you look at our district improvement plan, we've actually even added a goal around trying to build that out over time. And so I actually hope this is the first of what might be more presentations along this line. And I'm kind of kicking this one off. In the future, Jess will be the one who picks up and runs with it. And there's a couple reasons I'm doing this one, partly because of the financial impact. But I just kind of want to talk you through a conversation that we've actually been having for a long time, since I came in February, like March-ish, we started talking about this. And we've been talking about it so much, we feel like it's time to have a more complete discussion with the board about this, okay? So on that first slide, and I'm not going to read every word to you on all these slides, but I did want you to have quite a bit of background information. You know, our vision statement is about innovation, commitment, and excellence. And Tango Flight is a program that challenges students to build an airplane over 2 years. It's a 2-year build. And while they're building the airplane, they are introduced to curriculum that cover the disciplines of aerospace, electrical, mechanical, manufacturing, and design engineering. What we're doing that we think makes it innovative, there are 11 other schools in the state of Texas who are doing this. In fact, one of them is a neighbor very close to us. But what we're trying to do with this experience is actually create the P20 experience in a very tangible way within the school environment. And so we're not building a plane, we actually think we're building young people, and we're using the plane as an excuse to do it. And I know that's kind of would be echoed by others. But what we're talking about is not just the skills related to the academic curriculum, but we're actually trying to put together a framework that builds young people around their essential skills, sometimes called soft skills, and connect them to the workforce needs that are present in our community and the post-secondary educational experiences that are present in our community. And so, going to the next slide here, I'm actually going to look at y'all's instead of mine. What we're really trying to do is work with the Greater Waco Aviation Alliance, TSTC, MCC, Baylor, and Midway ISD, as well as other community mentors, okay, to promote the idea of project-based learning that will, at the result of all of this, give us an airplane. But more than that, what it will do is allow these students to have ongoing interactions with professional teachers and instructors from TSTC and MCC, students who are in the School of Aerospace Engineering at Baylor University, and our own Midway staff to work cooperatively in the process of building this plane. So our staff would essentially work as a project manager with curriculum that is overseen and somewhat, and at least partially delivered by TSTC and MCC staff that is done and work accomplished by our students with Baylor University students helping guide them through the process. And all of it being mentored by industry partners. We did a presentation today to industry partners in the aerospace field. You know them, Howmet, L3, others. We could give you a long list. Ashley could give you a long list. And so we're trying to put all this together in one environment, in one ecosystem, where students are learning curriculum, they're doing hands-on work, and at the same time, they're being mentored by people in the industry and in post-secondary work. The other thing we want to do is make sure that we're building awareness for our students about jobs they can find within our community, and whether those are jobs that require full-year degrees or jobs that look for certifications, more of what you might see at TSTC, and help build within our students the efficacy. And for me, that's a big piece of it. We talk so much about workforce development and about training, and so much of that's about skill development. But when you talk to employers, what they'll tell you is that what kids don't do well is communicate. I'm going to summarize it. They don't adult very well. And we want to bring adults in to help coach them up on that side, not only about what we need them to do, but actually speak encouragement and positivity to them. They need to be told by people as often as is possible that they can do this if they'll just develop a little perseverance. Like at the moment something gets hard is when you start working. If it's easy, you're not really working yet, right? And so people to tell them that the struggle is where the learning occurs. So this is what we're trying to do. And you can see an anticipated project timeline on this next slide, where right now what we're working on is securing a spot with Tango Flight. You have to sign an agreement in advance that lets them know that you want to do it. And we're working on funding, which I'll talk more about in a few minutes. Once we secure the spot and we have the funding in place, part of what we've been working with since March is securing instructors and mentors. A lot of that's been curriculum crosswalks with MCC and TSTC. That work is ongoing, but we feel confident that we'll be able to pull this together in a way where our kids can come out of this program with some level of either micro-credentialing or credit at TSTC, some level of micro-credentialing or a head start on their credit at MCC, so that they're not just doing it for the purposes of having gone through the experience, but they'll actually come out with some post-secondary credit or credentialing. We're trying to get them a head start, and we'll offer these students these experiences for a lot less expensive than what you pay for credit hour when you start going to school. And so the technical impact, and I'm going to repeat some of what Jess said, but you hop in here, man. Don't wait for me to invite you. But we have pathways in our school right now at Midway High in engineering, comp sci, and mechanical pathway, as well as even some of what we see in our more trades-oriented side. The first part of what you do in this build is you work on sheet metal. There's just a whole lot of sheet metal work. And so just hands-on dirty work. And we think that's good for kids, whether you're an engineer or whether or not you see yourself as a metal bender. We want you doing this. It connects to our Gateway to Technology programming, even with our younger students. It will marry with our Project Lead the Way curriculum, and will allow us to connect to our TEKS as well as the post-secondary curriculum, so that our kids could receive something like dual credit, micro-credentialing. We're still working through some of the details on that, but we're far enough down the road and deep enough into the conversations. And when I say deep enough, we've had actually half a dozen conversations with Beth Wooten at TSTC. We've had at least 2 working conversations at MCC. We've had 3 conversations with representatives from Baylor. And so we've been working very hard on looking at how all this is going to marry up. And then we flip to the developmental impact, and I've already talked about this some, so I'm going to go through it sort of quickly. That's our next slide, if you don't mind advancing it for me. We want to develop the sense of community that our students have. I talked about them having efficacy. Project Aristotle, which is quoted in a book called Big Potential by Sean Acor. Sean Acor is a Midway grad, by the way. Found that it is easy to assume if you put a group of high IQ people together, they naturally would exhibit high collective intelligence, but this is not the case. Individual success, well-being, and performance are all connected to the people who are around you. So we're trying to surround our young people with high-achieving Baylor students and post-secondary professors and teachers, so that we're building for them not just the learning experience, but a network of individuals who can help usher them out of high school and into the next steps in life. Again, expose them to what is available for them right here in the Waco area, whether they see themselves as TSTC students or engineering students or comp sci students. No matter how they view themselves, they can see the opportunities that exist here in the Waco area. And then it gives them a network that they can work with that will allow them to be ushered from where they start to where they go. They say it's not what you know, it's who you know. That's not 100% true, but knowing people helps you find the inroads so that you can demonstrate what you know when the time comes. And so we're really excited about this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these next 3 slides because they're kind of repetitive, but we are trying to make sure that we have these key partnerships that involve our school, that involve education and and connects with post-secondary employers, so that we have greater diversity and representation in these programs, so that we can impact at scale. We don't want to start this program and it die. We want it to be sustainable. Every 2 years, we want to be flying an airplane. And to do that, we need to make sure that we have a deep partnership that's committed to success over time. And then we also want to see our students have a lot of experience across platforms. So whether these students view themselves as computer engineers, computer scientists, or as folks in our construction trades classes, that they're interacting at early ages. I cannot tell you how many fights I've refereed over the years between the architects, the engineers, and the construction crews. It'd be nice if they learned to value each other earlier in the process. Okay, Ms. Wynn, if you don't mind. Like I said, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these because they're kind of repetitive, but we see TSTC as being a significant partner in what it looks like for our students to receive the curriculum and the curriculum guidance. If you don't mind, flipping to the next one. MCC, very, very similar. We think they may be able to get some credit for this, and we'll be rolling them into what it looks like to be involved in helping us make sure we have some of that staff around. In addition to that, we have a volunteer board that these folks will help serve on to usher the project from beginning to completion. Same thing at Baylor. One of the things we're really excited about at Baylor is their students being involved. They have student groups that are required to do a certain amount of volunteer hours. And we actually met one of those young men today who works with that group. Very excited about working with our kids on this build. They said it's actually a growing student group at Baylor, and they're looking for opportunities. So the time is right, okay? And then this is the group that we went and talked to today amongst others, and this is where our community industry partners come alongside. We're looking to them to help us support this financially, but also be deeply involved in helping us make sure that with the curriculum and experiences the students have actually map to jobs when they come out of school. So really, really excited about that. To wrap up, and I'm sort of going quickly here, I have 2 more slides for you. We have the perfect location to do this build. Because of the investment of this board and leaders that were here prior to me showing up, we have a great site in our CTE building to accomplish this build, and we have the space to do it. You actually don't have to have as much space as you think you would, because you don't put the wings on the airplane to the very, 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 very end. So you can do it in not as much space as you would think. And then we drag it out probably to TSTC and do the first flight there. The first flight's always done by the owner of the company, and then the second flight they start letting everyone else go up. I've kind of called dibs on second flight. I want to demonstrate to our kids how much I trust them, frankly. So I think I'll do that, I think. So anyway, last slide. Y'all, there's a program cost. Yeah. There's a one-time $16,500 fee. There's a program fee of $89,962, and then an ongoing curriculum cost. As well as the $7,000. All in, it's $128,335. This is where Ms. Futris comes in. We have been, in addition to talking Vader, I've been doing a lot of talking in the community about our vision for this. And part of what our discussion was today with the Greater Waco Aviation Alliance was trying to get industry partners to invest in this. And if we can get non-district funds to get us launched, we're going to do it. The $15,000 curriculum fee we can pick up moving forward. We have it through Perkins grants and other funding that we can pick this up. But this is too heavy of a lift while us talking about being in the budget situation we're in for us to take on by ourselves. And so we're looking for folks to come alongside and fund it. And so part of the reason that we're talking about this with the board tonight, A, we think it's exciting. B, we want people to know that although we're talking about coming up with ways to be sustainable in our funding for our students, we have not lost our commitment to excellence. We're not going to step backwards in the process of trying to stay sustainable. We're going to stay committed to innovation, commitment, and excellence. And we think this is the next big step in our CTE programming. There's a lot of discussion that I'm a part of, as well as Mr. Tullis, in particular around workforce development, and the needs of our community. We think we can take a big bite out of this by taking on initiatives such as this one. And so if it gets funded, we're going to come back to the board, and we're going to talk about actually permission to sign the contract and move forward. If it doesn't get funded, we're not going to do it. And so really, I wanted to put it on your radar tonight early in the process so that as you hear it being discussed, you'll know what we're doing. You might talk to individuals about what it is we're trying to pull together. It does not require a new course in our course catalog because it fits so nicely with some things that we're already doing. If we can get it paid for, we're going to try and build an airplane. So we're excited about that. And in the process of building airplanes, we think what we're going to do is make some great experiences for kids that continue to fuel the economy of the greater Waco area. With that, I'll entertain any questions you have. And Jess and Ashley, if I left anything out that y'all think is pertinent, I would invite you to chime in.
Questions from the board?
So we have the space, where you want to do it in the CT wing. I know what you're talking about. How would that affect the other classes that are already using that space? How would they work that out?
So we'll do some movement and rotating on some different program. We're not looking to get rid of any program or any piece of that. The other side of it is they utilize that for some of those spaces for maybe a period a day versus being able to use those spaces a little more functionally throughout the day. And not to mention some of those are really putting things on display so we can really highlight some of the industry partners, et cetera. So we're not looking, we'll make some shifts. There's some other places that we can shift these aspects to.
And so the plane we're talking about in this program, is it a 2-seater plane? Is it a 4-seater plane?
It's a 2-seater.
So it wouldn't be that big. I mean, I
Oh, no,
when
ma'am.
it's sitting there and not being worked on, would it be in the way of the other things? But it's only a 2-seater?
It's a 2-seater. what was it, got like a 5-gallon gas tank when we saw it. We actually saw this program at work at Eastview High.
Well, they said it would fly for 3 hours. So,
Yeah, it's crazy.
But yeah, I mean, the shop that we saw in Georgetown was probably a quarter of the size of this boardroom. Now, it was tight in there, but it was not, certainly was not a huge space.
The plane that we're building is a plane that anybody could order online and build in the garage. And it's one that it is the most popular of the ones that's used for just recreational airplane folks. It's called an RVI-12, I believe. I know, it sounds crazy. Just hop out in the garage. Have you built one?
No,
Okay.
but don't tell my wife you said. Don't tell my wife.
Well,
So how many?
if Mr. Rossick wants to be a mentor, he can.
Yeah.
How many students would be able to access the program?
Good question. 15 to 20-ish. And the way we're talking about doing it, so most builds are done by seniors only, but because of the robust programming we have at middle school, we actually feel like what we can do is have that split between a number of juniors and a number of seniors. And part of what we would do with juniors is develop leadership capacity within them so that when they become seniors, they would help bring the juniors along in the process so that you've got this sort of rotating circle of juniors and seniors working side by side throughout the course of the build, and you're building this peer-to-peer leadership program.
I just had a comment to add, as the parent of a college student who's in mechanical engineering. That has been a very eye-opening process, and some things that I have learned watching my child go through mechanical engineering. Number one, it's an extremely hands-on process, and if you're not getting that, you're not getting the value out of your degree. Secondly, mentoring is critical. You've got to have people pulling you forward. And thirdly, there are limited opportunities to get those experiences in college. Our son, this was his second summer after college, and he did get an internship. Now, the cool thing about that was that he made a lot of money, and they had a DoD contract, so he got paid all summer to blow stuff up. That was his takeaway. What he did not really get was good mentoring, good instruction, collaboration, community. I mean, it was not a bad experience, but as a parent wanting to watch him learn and gain all of the things you just talked about, that really was not his takeaway. And he spent the summer, again, he blew stuff up and he got paid to do it. So that was fun, but it really didn't further his education. I would love to see him get to do something like this while he's still in high school, so that he would been so much better prepared for the next step if he had this kind of experience as a younger student. So,
If we're able to raise more money, can we do more than one build?
I don't know that we would have the space at that point. And especially in our first, like, what I would say is let us get the first one built and see how that goes and see how much support we get. Theoretically, with the number of students we had, we could theoretically have 2 sections going at once. But we would really, yeah, we could actually stagger them. But we would need to be very cautious about space at that. I'm looking at you, but space would be the limiting factor on that, really, wouldn't it?
We would probably do just like you just kind of talked about. We would probably add an additional section where then 2 sections are working on the same plane.
I guess that's true, and we could build every year.
And we could build, you could try to double your time and build a new airplane every year.
I guess that's true.
And do something similar to
you
that.
got to walk before you can fly.
Yeah. Well, and there is a high school personnel impact on this. Like we'd be dedicating some sections to this, and so there's a personnel cost that's folded into all this that we would that we would have to be able to take on, and that's when that M&O budget starts to hit. Yeah. So there's a few pieces we'd need to work out, but we have the number of students we have to think as big about this as we want.
You know, one thing, I mean, there's lots of things I love about this, but one thing that we've got to think more towards is providing programming that's different. We're in a competitive world, right? Whether it's kids between school districts or other school options. So providing these kind of opportunities, I think, is going to give us some stickiness and give us more opportunity to get kids to Midway. So.
In my conversations with Allison, with Jess, with Ms. Futris, with Dr. Odajima, even on like that CNI side, we see these types of programs and projects as being extraordinarily useful to our students, but very connected to our community. I don't want to steal too much of Jess's thunder, but like we're right now in the process of working with some partners that we could pretty quickly be in a position where we're having students do tax returns for the public. Like that'd be part of their educational experience on that finance track. So in every
Come work for Jonathan.
so in every one of our I just went blank on what it's called, but programs of study, we're trying to find these types of projects. You know about the culinary program and the work they're doing to basically run a cafe for teachers out of the building. We're trying to look at these things in everything we do.
Yeah.
And in everything we do, we're trying to get kids to think, go ahead and say it, I didn't hear you. The Panther News Network, so what we're doing with this parent editorial board, we're actually going to fold kids into being some of the content creators for that. Sure. And so like in every one of these things, the other part that's embedded is business model. And so whether you're building a plane, whether you're doing tax returns for folks, whether you're doing the cafe, kids also have to think about profit and loss and how you're making money and supply and demand. So in all of this, what we're trying to do is just equip a stronger contributor to society, and whether that means the way in which they contribute to workforce or even the way they balance their own books and the way they think about their own personal family finances. Amen. We want all of our kids just to be stronger in their savvy about what it means to be connected to an economic structure that they dwell in. And so we're trying to think about it through all of it. We're just taking it in bites. And so I'm chomping at the bit, and so is Jess, and he tells me it's coming, Dr. Allen, it's coming. So we're going.
So how did you end up with this program? What drew you to this program? What other programs are out there? There are other ideas we could think about for the future, but why did you pick the Tango, like, let's build an airplane?
So I'll tell you this. There's two ways that hit our radar. One, we have a person who's a part of our education foundation named Becky Cram, who heard this presentation when she was at the Greater Waco Alliance Aviation President. Is that where she heard it? And I think she heard the presentation from our neighbor who's doing this same project. And she came to us and said, y'all need to be doing this. And so I don't know how early I got involved in this. Did you pull me into this or did Becky do it? I hadn't been here a hot minute. And I said, y'all, we can do more than build airplanes. Let's think about this bigger. Let's think about let's take this discussion and turn it into dual credit, articulated credit, micro-credentialing. Let's turn this into pulling in all of our partners. Let's create a P20 lab where we do this in a structured way. Jess talked a whole lot about structure on the front end, structure and sustainability. And so like most great ideas, it kind of started with some people talking, and then it grew into something that we felt like we could make really robust and sustainable, not just for our students, but for the district at large.
I think the other side of that too was there is a significant aviation alliance within the Waco area, and what makes these capstone opportunities viable and valuable to kids is that we have this opportunity to connect to industry and to this post-secondary, and once we started looking at those things that Dr. Allen talked about, it became like this is easy. Like this isn't an easy sell. Like it all aligns very well. Where in other areas we may have to pull some strings and do some different things because it's not as available to us.
Right, like build a car or something, perhaps, you know, or something, what all you
talked
can
about
build.
this originally, that was our conversation.
Solar
I
car.
don't care if we're building a car, if we're building a plane, what we're doing, it just needs to be valuable for the student opportunities. And this is one, like I said, it just kind of lined up with some opportunity that was available here.
Early in the process, Jess and I's conversation was if Tango Flight falls through, we're going to start looking at solar car, so that we can get our kids ready for sustainable energy, for Tesla, like that side of it. So we started talking early on about whether this comes together or not. We like the idea of thinking along these lines is something in which we're going to invest a lot of sort of energy.
This fits much better because there is an industry here.
Absolutely.
There's no automotive industry in Waco.
No,
Yes,
I
sir.
just
Very
wonder
little.
what
So-
ideas
Well-
are out there, like let's have solar cars too after we get this.
This is why we went this direction. If somewhat informed by work that I've been, meetings I've been sitting in, we, I don't know how to say it more bluntly than this. We just really want the funding to come through. If the funding comes through, we'll start building the plane fall of 24. Fall of 24, we'll be doing it. So,
Sounds like all the dominoes aligned well.
so far, we got one more big domino. We got a $128,000 domino that needs to fall. Or a bunch of $20,000 dominoes. Ashley will take all of them. So education foundations in the loop, they would essentially serve as there's a more technical term than passive, but folks could donate to that. They would get their 501c3 and they could help us manage the money on the back end of all that. So that's what we're working on.
Dr. Allen, twice you've used the term P20.
Yes, sir.
What is that?
I apologize. So it used to be very common that this was discussed. It kind of, I don't know why it fell off, but there used to be this big discussion about pre-K through grade 20. In other words, pre-K through college graduate. We used to call it P16, but now we say P20. But like, how do we build that pipeline that takes a kiddo from pre-K 3 and runs them all the way through to college and into career? Like, how do we step that all the way through? And a lot of that emphasis was really on that junior in high school to sophomore in college connection. If you can get them out of high school and into their sophomore year in college or through their technical degree, you know you've got them pretty well launched. And then there's been a lot of work lately around, okay, that's all good and well, but they got to connect to a job. If you've got a degree in something, but you don't have a job, what you have is student debt. And so you're going to have student debt almost regardless, but like student debt with no way to pay for it. And so there's been a lot of talk lately about how do we connect this up a little tighter.
I'm glad you asked, Colin. I didn't know what that was.
I apologize.
I'm not ashamed to be the only one that doesn't know. I'm all right with it. I love this project. I remember hearing you talk about it several months ago, and I mentioned it to my sixth grader, and her eyes lit up. So she's a little not quite ready yet, but she might be.
She's got some time.
She's got a little.
Yes, sir.
Other comments, questions, discussion? So this was a presentation, so my question is, what do you need from the board?
Awareness. So as we're talking about it, you know what we're talking about. Okay, we've kind of gone as far down this road where we can go before bringing the bosses in the loop. And then two, you kind of know what we're trying to do. And like we're all talking a lot of later these days, and I really don't want to distract from that. But with our big industry, L3 helmets, SpaceX we've talked to, and others. Some of you may know individuals. Some of you may have opportunity to interact with folks. And just know that this is kind of what we're working on. And if you know someone that we should be connecting with, we'd love for you to tell us. And we'll do the lift between Ashley and I. We'll do the talking, and we'll do the work of trying to talk to folks about what it is we're trying to accomplish here. Outside of that, I need to know that you like the idea, and it sounds like you do. And then just kind of help us as we get to where we want to go.
All right.
Just to tie this back into the Vader, though, $128,000 in donations is a big ask. Agreed? We cannot fundraise a $5 million budget.
No, ma'am, we cannot. No, ma'am, we cannot.
Well, and I'll tie it back into the Vader, which is that I'm glad that we're not just, sitting back and playing defense. I mean, we're basically saying, we've got a budget thing to work through, we're going to do it, but we're not going to stop looking for the next great thing that our students need, we got to.
We won't do that until we have to.
Absolutely.
But we have a mission statement that we started this board meeting with, but we have a vision statement that talks about innovation, commitment, and excellence. We're going to try and be a little better. We're going to be committed, and we're going to be committed to something that is at an exceptionally high level. So we're going to keep going.
You keep using blame metaphors, Cyril. I've heard you say launch and lift and high.
It's
That's great.
sorry.
No, I think it's wonderful.
All right.
Or maybe that's just me hearing it.
Yeah.
So before we take up the update on the STAAR assessment, each board member needs to complete their answers. We're going to pass them down to Mr. Witt, and then we'll see whether or not we
For me to grade, is that right?
yeah, we're going to get a grade.
This is.
Becky?
You won't have to report your answers out loud.
There will be no trading grade.
No, we're gonna turn them in so they get scored fairly and
Roll
accurate.
call to collect your answers.
I'm not doing the writing thing. I'm not doing it.
I did that too right before the test.
Good evening, board members and President Russick. We wanted to bring the state assessment results to you tonight, but also build in some context because we've had a STAAR redesign that was just implemented this year. So we certainly want to bring you the results that we've seen in the district and put that in context, and then also tell you what our next steps and our reflection is based on those results. So to begin with, we'll start with a bit of context. So with the passing of House Bill 3906 in 2019 with the 86th legislature, there were changes that were going to be implemented in the state assessment with the intent of aligning the STAAR better with actual classroom practice.
And so that meant that they were going to pilot a few things over the years and then fully implement this STAAR redesign this past school year. So that meant we were going to have 4 major changes, which was online testing, new question types, cross-curricular passages, and then evidence-based writing. So online testing we've been doing for ages. We've been a one-to-one district for I think 11 years now. We piloted the online testing very early. So this last year online testing, it was old hat for us. We'd already done it, so we experienced that. Some people did this for the first time ever this last school year. There are also new question types on this STAAR redesign. In that House bill legislation, it put a cap on the number of multiple choice questions that could be asked on a test. So back in the day, the test that we took, TOS, anybody remember Teams, Iowa test, those kinds of things, it was multiple guess, it was multiple choice. So those days are gone, and there's a certain quota of questions outside of multiple choice questions that ask, and those can be open-ended responses, it may be multiple right answers, or you may have to generate an answer based on a number keypad kind of thing. We also experienced cross-curricular passages. So there was more reading language arts assessment that were based on informational work that could come from different content areas. So it might be a social studies passage, a science passage, a mathematics passage, fine arts, which is great to read about that. It gives us some content, but it also means that students may need to use relevant background knowledge and vocabulary that they've learned in these other content areas in order to actually be assessed in reading language arts. So add some complexity there. It also called for evidence-based writing. So there's always been a writing component for STAAR. Usually it happened in 4th grade and in 7th grade. It was an additional test, so only those grade levels had a writing component, and then we also had some writing in the high school. Now every grade level has writing embedded in the test. And so the writing is not just a standalone prompt anymore. It is not, what is your favorite animal and why? It is based on a response to reading 1 or 2 selections and then either writing an informational passage or an argumentative response or some type of correspondence based on what you read. So different than what we've experienced before. Then those things are scored on a rubric by 2 graders. So to put this even more in context, let's look at some examples. You have in front of you an answer document, so you can respond on your own. So on this first question, this is a 3rd grade math response. So this is a 3rd grade test item from the actual test. So Miss Green had some fabric to make costumes in 3 different plays at school. The table shows the number of yards of fabric Miss Green used to make the costumes for each play. Miss Green has 27 yards of fabric left over after making the costumes for these plays. How many yards of fabric did Miss Green start with? So I'll give you a moment to do your calculations and respond. Audience participation is allowed as well. So what you would need to know, did anybody want to chime in? Mr. Russick, you look like you're chomping at the bit. B, excellent. So the correct answer is B, and so a 3rd grade student would need to know that to determine the yards of fabric that they started with, they need to sum all of the equal numbers together. So they're going to take the X, the Y, and the Z numbers and add those together, but they can't forget that they also have those leftover yards, so they've got to add the 27 there as well. That gives them the correct answer of 197. So moving on to the next question on your sheet there, it says that Jesse draws 11 shapes as shown in this graphic, and then it asks how many of the shapes are polygons with more than 3 sides. So there is no multiple choice answer here. You can't pick B. You have to actually generate the response. So they have a number keypad on their iPad, and they type in the number that they believe is the correct response. Would anyone like to give a stab at this one? 7. Very good. So what a student would need to know, and this is a 3rd grade student, I want to reiterate, they would need to know that polygons, it would have to have more than 3 sides, so they eliminate the one with 3 sides, and then they also need to remember that a polygon is a 2-dimensional closed figure that is made of line segments. So anything that had a curved line would not count. So you guys did very well on that 7. So moving on to those of you who have strengths in the reading language arts area, this is, it calls for a writing response. And so this is, I know you're speed readers, but let me just summarize. On one side, on the left, it talks about the rewards of recycling. So like if you were to reward people for doing that, this is a passage about that. The other side is sort of the opposite side to this, and it says you shouldn't reward, you should just make laws for recycling. So after the student reads the two passages, they then have this prompt, which says, read these selections and then write a response to the following. Explain your opinion about why people should or should not be rewarded for recycling. Write a well-organized, argumentative essay that uses specific evidence from the selections to support your answer. So pretty complex request here. This is a third grade reading test. Third grade. So moving on, we won't take time to write a response, but if you'd like to, we can check those after the end here. So to note, this response, I wrote down the scores. This response is worth 10 points because you have a 5-point rubric and then you have 2 scores, so you get a total of 10 points. Just to note, the state average on this question was 2.53 points.
Yeah.
The region average was 2.16, so that's lower. The Midway average was 3.19. And we had schools that range from like a 2.24 all the way to a 4.53 as far as their campus average. So not just something that we're working on, but something that everyone will be working on, improving in these areas. The last one is one of those examples of social studies type response. So this is actually from the Reading Language Arts test, and it's a grammar question, essentially. So you read the prompt here, and then you decide what changes need to be made in sentence 6. Sentence 6 said it's red, white, and blue and has a large white star. Anybody want to take a stab?
This is still a third grade question?
This is 4th grade.
Okay,
Slipped a fourth grade one in
grade.
there on you.
I feel better now.
Yeah.
1 year older.
Yeah. Anybody want to take a guess?
D.
No change.
D? Okay, good. That is correct. D, no change. Very good.
Now, Dr. Odejima, and I just as a reminder, the 3rd grade is the first time the students see a star.
Yes.
So not only are we talking about kiddos who are 10-ish, 9 or 10 years old, depending on that, but kids who've never seen a test like, I mean, we obviously get them ready for it, but it's the first time they will have taken a real star.
That's right, in 3rd grade.
Fascinating.
Very good. So these are some of the types of redesign we've seen with this year's assessment. A little different than what we experienced before. So moving on, these are the results of our Midway students. You're going to see results for those students that do not meet the requirement, the approaches level meets, and then the master's level. And you'll see a comparison to our scores as well as state and region scores in these slides. So this is all students in Midway together. It's not disaggregated by campus at this point. So there's some focus areas for us. You'll see as we move through here, the 4th grade reading, 6th grade reading math, 8th grade social studies, and then some rigor in all of the master's level of achievement we're going to look at closely this year. So looking at the reading test, I will, just to give you some context, Texas scores are going to be on the far left, those 3, and that's 3 school years, 21, 22, 23, the regions in the middle, and then our scores are on the far right. We're looking at kind of those last 2 scores to see how did we perform last year versus how did we perform with this new redesign this school year, and then how do we want to grow, what do we see. The other thing I want to give you some context on, if you want to make an A on your campus, the number they tell us to go for, to shoot for, is to have 30% in your master's, which is the far right bar. And then the red bar is meets. You want that one to be at least 60. And then the tallest bar there is approaches. And you want that one to be 90. So you're looking for 90, 60, 30. Or from the outside in, 30, 60, 90 would be an A if you were doing that by campus. So this is our score. You can see, like if we average those together, we would meet that mark. We're very close. So this is 3rd grade reading. And we did make some improvements from the previous year, except for masters. We slid a little bit in the masters area. This is 4th grade reading. Similar thing, we held on to what we had last year as far as the students that passed. We've got 86% passing there. 30, 60, 90, we're almost there, very, very close. This is 5th grade reading. It went up in almost all areas. It's 2 shy on the master's area, so that's really close. For 6th grade reading, we dipped down some. You'll notice even when we dip down, we're still above the state and region average. But again, that master's area is one we're looking at. And then also the overall students in that tallest bar, the 83%, we want that to be higher for 6th grade reading. Seventh grade reading, they did great. We had some progress in all of those areas. Masters took a little bit of a hit, but it's really close. Eighth grade, also very close to what we scored the previous year. We dropped in masters though. So we're seeing that trend kind of everywhere with the masters in this new test redesign. This is English 1, so held very close to where it's been the last several years. Masters dipped a bit, but we're still at that 30, 60, 90 mark. And then this is English 2. It looks a little different, but it always looks a little different. Masters is always a little lower score than some of the other tests compared to it, but still holding our own in that area. Moving on to math. In third grade math, we did well. We saw gains everywhere, so that's a huge celebration. In fourth grade math, we made some gains. We dropped a bit in the master's area. Still hit nearly that 30, 60, 90. We're close. In fifth grade math, we saw some gains, so that was excellent in the overall passing rate. Masters just dropped a bit. Sixth grade math, we lost some ground in the overall number of students who passed, and then dropped also in the master's area, which we're going to try to reclaim again this year. Seventh grade math looked great. Saw progress there everywhere, so that's excellent. Eighth grade math also saw gains everywhere, so that's excellent. The other thing I'll say about eighth grade math is, something to note about eighth grade math is that a good portion of our higher academic eighth grade students go on to take Algebra 1. So these are eighth graders that are not in our highest math class, and they still had flying colors passed and did well compared to all other models. So Algebra 1 slipped a little bit on the overall passing percentage and some in masters, but we're still hanging in there with the number of the passing rate. In science, this is fifth grade science. We do have a steady drop here for the last 3 years. I would have you remember that in the 2021 school year, all fifth grade science was still at intermediate schools. And then we split the year before that, or the year after that, and half of students were at elementary schools and the other half were still at River Valley. And then last year we were all at elementary schools. So there's a little bit of, I guess, movement of that science connection between those teachers that we're going to continue to work on. Eighth grade science held pretty close to where we were before, slipped a bit in masters this year. Biology did well, held at the 95% passing rate, 42% masters, so we'll continue to work there. And then this is social studies. In eighth grade social studies, we took a bit of a hit this year, so that's one of our focus areas. And then in U.S. history, 99% overall passing rate, 48% masters. So we score well in this and continue to maintain those high scores. So as far as a change in performance, I like to look at it in these terms because looking at all those graphs one after the other, it all runs together. So if you look at this, these are the changes in the percentage from 2022 to 2023. So last year's test, or 2 years ago, that wasn't the redesign, and last year's redesign. And then there's some conditional formatting on the percent of growth or loss that we experienced. So if we had 1% more pass or achieve in that level, it's colored green. If we were 0 to -4, so we slipped a bit, it's orange. And if we slipped significantly, so for me, that was like 5 points or more in the negative, I colored it red. So what you'll see here is that we have a couple of pockets, a couple of grade levels that we're going to focus on in all content areas. But the approaches and meets, we have more green than we do in the master's area. So master's is the one that took the greatest hit, that final column. And some of that is to do with the redesign and how we address that, and we work on instructional strategies to do that. Some of it has to do with the rigor of those questions now, which you've seen. It looks a little different than possibly a multiple choice test that you sat through before. But the other thing to add that context is how the state did. So that you can see here, Midway is the blue titled column and the state is purple. So if you look across the chart, you see like the green's kind of holding. Here and there are some pockets where we lose a little bit of ground. But when we get to the master's level of achievement, everyone experienced some loss there. So it's something that we'll address. This is not apples to oranges because you saw our average is above the state average in every category. But when we look at 2022 performance versus 2023 performance, this is where we know we have some areas to work. So as far as our reflection on this data and then our next steps. Now we are disaggregating student data. We're looking at specific content objectives, where we did well, where we need to improve. We're looking at particular student group performances, whether it's grade levels or certain student population demographic type things. We're assessing curricular needs. Do we have gaps in the curriculum? Do we have places where we need to push in different resources? We're progress monitoring. So we don't just rely on a one-time-a-year test to tell us how students are doing. We monitor beginning, middle, and end of year with a screener that everyone takes, K through 10th grade for reading and math, to know how they're doing on a regular basis, and then we progress monitor on the groups that we have the most concern with along the way. We'll start bringing that data to you as well so that you can see how we're performing. And then also, we are working on coaching our less tenured staff. We've talked time and time again about turnover and hiring shortages, and we have a lot of people that are new to the profession or new to Midway that need additional coaching. And so we are working to make sure that those staff have what they need to be experts in their content area, and then also have the best instructional strategies they can have. So that's our steps moving forward. You may remember that at this time, we usually have A through F ratings coming out. So we were planning this presentation in advance of the A through F ratings that were going to be released on September 28th. And we were going to communicate that with you all and with parents and community. We were preparing for those to come out and doing some work on our own with calculating our campus A through F ratings with our principals on the last Tuesday, September the 12th, when we found out this is not going to happen. So what we learned is that there was a press release at that time while we were sitting in the principals meeting that says we are not releasing the A through F ratings from Mike Morath and TEA. So they are holding off on releasing those ratings to adjust some of the probably scale scores and then some of the weights that happen within that accountability. So what we've learned is that the A through F ratings will be published sometime late October, probably early November. And at that time, communication would go out to parents and the community. We'll give you guys information as soon as we get that. There'll be an update in November when those come out to let you know exactly what those ratings look like and why those ratings are as they are. And then we'll be bringing on a recurring basis our progress monitoring to give you an update on how we're doing and what's happening there.
What is those last two items, the map and the line?
So the NWEA map is our essentially reading fluency test assessment that we use as a screener. We give it beginning, middle, and end of year, and then look at growth rates on that they help us calculate. Tango Lion is the math version of that. Yep. Very
That
good.
last bullet point is something that Dr. Jim and I talked a little bit about, and I think I shared it with our leadership last Tuesday, that we want to make sure that we have a really strong focus on this, and we think part of what does that is if we are fairly consistently talking to our board about what's going on in the schools academically with the same data that we're looking at. And so it may be a little bit of a shift. We don't want to bore you to death with the numbers, but we want you to see in real time what's going on with our kids. It's kind of a step in the direction of transparency, frankly. Like you shouldn't have to wait till the end of the year to know what's going on academically. And now our measures are different than the STAAR, but they are very informative in helping us understand what's going on with our students relative to growth, relative to whether or not they're getting a year's worth of growth in a year's time. I've had some experience with NWEA MAP before I came here, and one of the things that we'll also be able to communicate on that is how our students are performing relative to other kids in the country, as well as other kids in the state, because it's nationally normed and normed for the state of Texas. Tango Line, I'm frankly not nearly as familiar with, but the first time we roll these data pieces out to you, we'll do a little bit of a overview for you guys on what these tests are, what they communicate to us, what the reports look like for teachers, and then kind of that piece of it. But we want you to be receiving quasi-regular updates on what's going on with the academic performance of our students.
Other
Can I
questions?
tack onto that?
Sure.
I tack onto that because one of the two notes I had from this report to ask about was specifically about Tango Lion and that, because I know that parents right now from HAC have pass-through links they can click on to results, trends on that from previous years, even drilling down the exact question. So I'm wondering,
Right.
Are we able to provide the same kind of transparency on Tango and on map for parents?
I actually don't know that.
Is there a way to do that? Because I think
There are-
I think it would be helpful for them to
Yeah.
see, hey, how's my kid really doing, rather than waiting for STAAR, which we all
Right.
don't particularly like.
Right. There are reports that are sent out when we do those beginning, middle, and end of year. I know some of our elementary principals are working with teachers to present that data face-to-face with parents as they do parent-teacher conferences, so that they know what they're looking at and what it means and where we are in
And I know I've
progress.
seen that on the elementary side. I should know, especially in the middle school and high school, if there's a
Yeah.
plan to also communicate that
They do
on an
have,
ongoing basis.
they do have those assessments, and we'll send those out for sure. Excellent.
One thing I don't see in the focus area, but kind of intuitively, I'm thinking this, tell me if I'm wrong, but the human interface changed, right? That was the big change. How much of the decrease could be attributed to the lack of familiarity with the interface, the use of the tool? And I know we're very blessed to have been using technology a long time, but it may not be being implemented the same way. It's kind of like when Microsoft decides to do an operating system update, we all become idiots for a little while till we figure it out.
Right,
Even though it's the same word in Excel we've always used or whatever.
right.
So I'm wondering if there's some just familiarity with the interface that over time can help.
There could be, and I'm sure much will come out about that as we begin to prepare for the next round of this
Because you see that trend
revision.
through the state, through everywhere else. It
That's
wasn't
right.
just us.
That's right.
And I don't know,
That's
I
a,
know
that's
there's
a
lots
great
of
thought.
variables that
The
change.
thing I can tell you is that we tested online the year prior. It was not the new question types, but it was on the iPad. So we had some experience with that previously, but maybe not necessarily selecting those answers or typing those answers. Even though we'd practiced it, we hadn't done that as this new redesign calls for it this year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think, Rick, I was looking at this too, is that if we look at this midway versus the state change year to year, and to me, if I see an area where we went down like 11 and the state went up 2 or 3, it tells me maybe that's more than just interface, right? Maybe there's something else going on. If everybody kind of trends up or down, I think that's
Yeah.
probably attributable. That's just the first pass at it.
yeah. Very good. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Becky. All right, consent agenda. We got minutes from our August meeting, a number of amendments to our local board policies, our MOU with Robinson ISD on Empower, contract for the election in November with the Elections Office, and then the joint agreement for that same election. Approve folks for the SHAC members, new courses, the DOI amendments, the MHS goaltender out-of-state trip, early graduation requests, a couple of those. Credit by exam report, that'll be approving that report, and then the budget amendments that Wesley talked about. Does any board member wish to remove any item from the consent agenda? If not, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Vick. Second by Mr. Alford. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. And let me just say how much I appreciate everybody that's willing to serve on the SHAC committee, including Mr. Tullis. Saw his name on
Thanks
there.
for approving.
Yeah, yeah,
The list looks like a big, robust group. I'm really
does,
excited.
really does. Resolution to nominate folks to the Appraisal District Board of Directors. I asked Mr. Green if he was willing to be our nominee. He indicated he was, so I move that we adopt a resolution nominating Mr. Green to hopefully continue to be on that board.
So moved.
With second by Ms. Vick. That's okay. Any discussion?
So excited. He said,
Well, and we can nominate somebody else. I mean, we can nominate up to 5 people, but I don't know, I mean, y'all know what we've traditionally done is we've got enough votes that if we cast them all for the person we nominate, we can elect that person.
Little bit off, well, on the topic, but Wasn't there legislation that changed the makeup of the appraisal district? And then how's that gonna affect our representation?
It shouldn't, my understanding based on the last meeting is that they're adding 3 at-large positions in addition to the 5 taxing entity elected positions like myself and
Okay.
others. So there should be 3 at-large, people that are joining as well.
And those are elected by the public, right?
Yeah, we don't have any.
What election, when would they be
Will they be in
elected?
the spring elections or something?
And the other thing that they're doing is they're shifting, because what's always been is 2-year terms, and all 5 positions were up at the same time, and they're not gonna have them staggered.
Okay.
Given the matters we have before us, do you think it would be appropriate at this time to just review why we have representation on that board and what that board does and does not do?
Sure. We have representation on that board because pretty close to 1/4 of their budget is funded by our taxpayers. So there's that. And what that board does and does not do, I will let Mr. Green speak.
We, as a board, manage the budget of the appraisal district, and we handle legal matters, or we oversee legal matters with our, the legal counsel, with Mr. Myers, is also the legal counsel for the board. And we have no jurisdiction, no authority over home values or property values or appraisals. We hire and fire the chief appraiser, similar to what this board does with the superintendent. And so regardless of what taxpayers might believe, the 5 board members on the McLennan Central Appraisal District do not dictate what the value of any properties are. So.
You heard it here.
And really not too long ago, I think in the 80s, every district we did our own appraisals, right? And had to do our own taxing as individual. So this was a process of putting those all together in one clearinghouse, so to speak. Yeah. And didn't you guys do a name change as well?
Yes, glad you mentioned that. Because there are some aspects of the appraisal district that reach outside of McLennan County proper, and in kind of coordination with a lot of other districts around the state. It's no longer the McLennan County Appraisal District, it's the McLennan Central Appraisal District. So the acronym won't change, but the C will change from county to central.
I heard you say central, I thought, oh, we made a mistake.
And to show that it's not a function of the county government.
Correct.
Yeah, because there's been a lot of confusion about that. Everybody thought that that's part of the county, and it's not.
Right.
So.
Okay, so I will, I've weighed in the past previous years on this as not a fan of the taxing entities being on that board. The fact that the state has now said we're going to add elected positions to that, really makes me feel better about that. So I have no objection to what we're planning to do, nomination-wise or others.
Well, but you can nominate somebody else.
I'm not.
Okay,
Mr.
all right.
Green's probably the best qualified person I know for that.
So help me understand, if they start rotating them, how are the,
Yeah, when will our position?
right, because right now, if all 5 of them go up, and that allows us to use our weight to get one of those 5 positions elected, but what happens if they're in a rotating basis and we're revoting every year?
I don't know what
That changes the dynamics.
That is a question that was posed at our last board meeting to Mr. Myers, and that is still being sifted through logistically.
Yeah.
Because I had the same question.
Because in that case, the largest voter, the largest taxing entity, which would be the county or the city?
City of
City.
Waco.
Then they'll dictate every election.
Right.
And they'll have all the elected, they'll get to dictate who gets it every year.
Right.
In every position.
So I don't know how that's gonna work, but that is a question that is currently being dissected and.
Right.
Those folks down there in Austin, they from time to time adopt statutes, and they don't really tell you how it's supposed to work.
Really?
Just on rare occasion, Rick, on rare occasion.
Thankfully, it's the exception, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
So, any further discussion? Not all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously? That motion carries unanimously. Yeah, you gotta vote for yourself.
So our only candidate is Mr. Green, then we can.
He is our nominee.
Nominee, okay.
Yes, he is our nominee.
We actually vote in November, is that right?
October.
Is it October? Okay.
Well, I say that, we have to send ballots in before December 15th, I think is the date
Well,
called.
last year they made us, or 2 years ago, they made us go early or something because we're a larger district. There was some change. in the
Yeah,
order.
just with the timing of
I
it.
don't remember what it was, but
Do we have any personnel matters to take up here? We don't, do we?
No, sir.
We have personnel matters to take up in closed session.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything else besides superintendent's communications to take up in here?
Not in here, no, sir.
Okay, superintendent's communications then.
Gladly. So, you may or may not know that there is policy that dictates that we have certain days of awareness and remembrance. And some of these are better known than others. And so as part of what I'll do in my communications, that's what I'm doing this month in particular, but I'll make sure that the board is aware of those things that we are required to recognize, and then those things that are options according to policy and law, but not necessarily required. So September 11th is a required day of remembrance. It's called Patriot Day. It is also Texas First Responders Day. September 18th through the 22nd is Celebrate Freedom Week. September 17th is Constitution Day. And September the 29th is Indian American Heritage Day. Those are all required awareness dates. What that means is they show up in our curriculum, and we do some things to acknowledge those dates, not the least of which is mention them from the board dais. This month is Hydrocephalus Awareness Month. Some optional days to be celebrated this month are National Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, Hispanic Heritage, which runs from September 15th through October 15th, so it lapses 2 months. Labor Day, Grandparents' Day, Arts and Education Week, IT Professionals Day, which is today. Where's Jesse?
Is it today or?
There it is.
Appreciate you. Good job. Thank you.
They made their way into social media, and so anyway. And those are the optional ones, so I wanted to make sure that I took a second to mention those.
That's it?
That's all I have.
Okay, great.
Okay. We know who's got the under for tonight. All right, so without further ado, then we'll go into closed session under Texas Open Meetings Act 551.074, 076, 082, and 0821 at 8:44-ish.
If you're okay, we'll start with personnel. I've asked Ashley just to check this.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. superintendent does. I assume he's gonna give it to somebody here. You, gonna give that to somebody that can actually make a motion?
I was actually gonna do one of those administration recommends that, blah, 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 but.
She started a new job, so she's got work.
I don't care.
Can you make the motion?
I don't, yeah, I don't care. All right, we are back in open session, 10:04, 10:05 from closed session. No action was taken in closed session. We have 2 agenda items to possibly act on. The first one is agenda item, I guess we're under C3, consideration and possible action regarding abandonment of contract by teacher upon refusal of the district to accept that teacher's resignation. Does any board member wish to make a motion with regard to that agenda item?
Yes.
Ms. Vick?
I recommend the board issue a finding in accordance with Texas Education Code, section 21.210 C2, and 19 Texas Administrative Code, section 249.14J, that good cause did not exist for Emmeline Whitmer to abandon her employment contract with Midway ISD and fail to comply with Texas Education Code provisions regarding resignations.
Ms. Vick, you said recommend, you mean you move?
Sorry, yes, I moved. It said
All right.
That's why I coughed at the beginning. I was like, I was supposed to move.
Thank you,
Says,
ma'am.
Yes, edit that to I move. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion by Ms. Vick. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Witt. Everybody heard and understand the motion. Any discussion or questions? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Our remaining agenda item that's appropriate for consideration now in light of the board's approval of that motion is consideration and possible action regarding authorizing the superintendent to notify TEA with regard to Ms. Whitmer's contract abandonment. And does any board member wish to make a motion with regard to that possible action item?
Yes.
Ms. Vick?
I move that the board authorize the superintendent to send a letter to the Texas Education Agency seeking sanctions against Emmeline Whitmer education certification for abandonment of her teacher contract with Midway ISD.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Green. Any discussion, questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. And with that, we're out of agenda items. Thank you all, and we're adjourned.
Thank you.